Where'll you be going?
Texas?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Go on, make it happen.
And now here's Steve and Michelle.
Hola, from the heart of Dripping Springs, we are Mallet and Michelle, hosted by me, Michelle Lewis, and Steve Mallet.
Michelle, welcome back from Mexico.
Thank you so much. It was much, much needed.
Yeah,
we
it
had a good
sounded
time.
like a nightmare trip to me, but in your world, that's a dream trip.
I can't wait to tell you about it.
Yeah. Hey, one of our guests today, Judge Burns.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been working on getting him on for a while.
Yes,
so
it has been.
I think we're going to have some good stories. And our sponsors. Couldn't do it without our sponsors.
M. Elliott Studios.
Capital Farm Credit.
Mallet Integrity Team. Oh, I did it.
Economic Power Solutions.
I did it out of order.
You did it wrong. Jeez,
I did it out of order.
I think there's still alcohol coursing through your veins from your trip to Mexico.
Well, you know what I know you didn't do while I was gone? You didn't go to Pigpen.
I did not go to Pigpen. I wouldn't do that without you.
Well, I did when you were out of town.
I did work my ass off doing my job and your job, though.
Oh, it's so sad. Oh, it's so hard.
You didn't even care.
I didn't. I didn't. You're exactly
It
right.
was really busy while you were gone. We missed you, but it sounded like you had a wonderful time.
We did. I learned a couple of things. You know, I grew up down in the valley, so I'm very familiar. I'm actually not only familiar, I kind of am Mexican culture.
Are you fluent?
No, only when I've had mas tequilas, which you know is kind of funny.
Mas tequilas.
I actually don't drink tequila. That's the funny part. I don't drink tequila because tequila and Michelle, I'm like this naturally. I'm already 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Oh, yeah, well,
I don't need that. I'll drink champagne I'm more of a vodka or a whiskey girl. I like whiskey.
So sophisticated.
I like whiskey. But a couple of funny things happened. I kind of wanted to give you some highlights of my trip. I lost somebody in a foam party, a pool foam party.
And you had progressive pictures showing as she slowly disappeared into the foam.
She got disoriented between the foam and the water, and I had to pull her out. And so that was kind of funny.
I'm sure alcohol was not involved in that whole
Not at all.
mess.
We were just sipping iced tea the whole time. The first night we were there, Todd and I went to a Michelin star restaurant. That was amazing. It was 20 courses each.
Oh, jeez.
About a quarter of the way through. Now, I have a mild allergy to seafood. What is my favorite food?
But we don't care. You just did it anyway. Yeah.
By about three or a quarter of the way through, I could not breathe. I could not breathe. My nose was just continuously
running. Did you have
running.
an EpiPen or anything?
Why do people always say that? I'm like, if you hang out with me, you know I'm allergic to shrimp. So just scream. Anybody got an EpiPen? I'm not going to carry an EpiPen. Okay, so if I go
Did
down.
Did somebody jab you with an EpiPen?
No,
Okay.
I had to go shoot myself up with Afrin like 100 times. But the food was amazing. The presentation, I'll have to show you the pictures. I didn't even get to that far because we were laughing so hard about the foam party. But the presentation was amazing. Like the microgreens, every dish was this beautiful artistry of flavor.
Wow.
And I couldn't freaking taste a dadgum
after you
thing.
had to.
I couldn't taste anything. And
As you're in anaphylactic shock.
And it's like every time you get up, they either give you a new napkin or they fold your napkin. I kept getting up and going to the restroom. Finally, I just took some toilet paper and just wrapped it around my hand and I'm at the table. And about halfway through, I had to go to the room and get the Afrin. Todd's like, I'll go get it for you. I was like, no, I got to walk. I got to get it out of my system. And I started feeling again. But then, literally, I think my throat was closing up. But it's only because I couldn't breathe. Okay.
Michelle almost died in Mexico.
But then we thought there was a couple behind us. And they kept bringing him food. And they got there right before us. And I was like, Todd, oh my God, they just brought him another course. I don't know how. And I would eat a bite because everything's supposed to be one bite. But I don't eat anything on one bite. So I'd eat a little bite and then Todd would eat the rest. So Todd basically had 40 courses of food. Then they brought out the chocolate. I thought about you during this.
Oh, yeah.
The chocolate
Got
phase.
me sold already.
It was this beautiful glass menagerie tower. And it had... It had these little cubbies, and each cubby had a different
chocolate,
different thing of chocolate. Like it was cocoa pepper or some kind of Brazilian chocolate. What are those chicharrones. What are chicharrones?
I have no idea.
Fried pig skin. What are chicharrones?
With chocolate on it?
Yes, with chocolate on it. And then they had almonds or something like that. But it was amazing. So I drank 4 gallons of water to try to breathe. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. That meal was not included in our inclusive, and it was about $400. So give or take.
I was going to ask you how much it was. Was it worth it?
It was worth it. I wish I could have breathed and
tasted it.
And tasted it. And also it was very confusing because the pesos, so you take whatever the pesos is divided by 17 and then you figure out what the American version is. But it was really kind of confusing because I probably had oxygen deprivation in my head. Did. And I don't think I tipped him enough. But I felt bad about that.
The 20% tips or 15 to 20%?
Well, they do, but it's just on you. It wasn't automatic.
No, I know. But like in Europe, it's so confusing
in Europe they don't. In
Mexico,
Europe,
they don't tip like we do here.
Yeah, and so, but I felt bad about that. Okay, so here's the other thing. The water is smelly. Not like when they say, oh, don't drink the water. Everything in the resort was high end, really classy. It's all filtered. But the water just has like some odd smell, very chemically.
It's probably something they treat
bleachy,
the water with because everybody that comes down there can't get, what is it, Mexican travel stomach or whatever they call it?
Montezuma's Revenge. Yeah, but it has like, and when you take a shower, it smells like you're taking a shower in Clorox. And my hair is just very dry.
They've got some kind of treatment there for that facility.
So, okay, another unusual thing, which I'm from the Valley. I'm a Tex-Mex girl. We're Texas girls. There were no avocados. Like we would say, we went to like a taco bar. We were like, where's the guacamole? Oh, we don't have guacamole. What do you mean have guacamole on tacos?
Maybe guacamole is a California thing.
No, you know why?
Texas thing.
Because
it's got to be California because we don't have avocados in Texas, do we?
Yeah, we get them from Mexico.
Oh. That's true.
Yeah, we get them from Mexico. But the reason why is because I asked one of the waiters is because the cartel, and actually we watched this Netflix or documentary and I totally forgot about it. The cartel have taken over the avocado trade.
Oh, God.
Hand to God. Because marijuana is so legal, they don't have the hold on marijuana. So it's avocados and sex trafficking is what the cartels do. And so the avocados are more expensive in Mexico than they are in the United States. Yes. So there's that. Okay. No Uber at the airport. Can't get Uber at the airport, but you can get an Uber to the airport. Why? Because the cartel control the airport and the taxis. Cabs, yeah. And they fight. Blah, blah, blah. I am over the aggressive shop owners. If I went into Vintage Soul and they just like constantly hounded me and walked around with me.
Look at this. Yeah, look at this.
Oh, pretty lady.
Yeah,
pretty lady.
Oh, this looked good on you.
I recognize you from the hotel. Like one of them, it was actually kind of funny. He saw Todd and I was walking with Sierra and he goes, oh, lady, I recognize you. I recognize him too, but he was here with 2 different women. And we start, it's all to get a rise out of you. I was over that. I climbed up into a roof and saved a cat. A feral muchacho.
Oh, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, we called him Muchacho. He was up on the roof and he was screaming his head off. This was at the hotel and he's like, meow.
And you climbed up there? What was Todd doing while you climbed up on the roof to save the cat?
Whatever. He left. Sylvia was with me and we were heroes. And then Muchacho was my cat and slept on our back patio. And every time I'd walk out, he'd follow me around, go, meow, meow, meow. So there was that. But
where does Muchacho live now? He is not living at your house, is he?
No, because I'm not.
Didn't come home in your suitcase?
And I was telling the girls, I'm really not a cat person. I'm more of a dog person. They said, looks like the cat distribution system worked out. Also, there were iguanas everywhere. And apparently the cats like to fight with the iguanas. So like Muchacho had little owies on him from fighting with.
Wow.
Kendall saw a monkey. Sounds like
the iguanas win most of the time.
The iguanas win. Kendall saw a monkey, which was kind of funny. I brought 9 bathing suits. I wore 8 of them.
So all the men in our audience listening right now are saying to themselves, I don't even have 2 bathing suits. I have 1 bathing suit, let alone 9.
I brought 9 bathing suits for Todd. You know why? Because I ordered them from Shein and we matched. We had matching bathing suits. And that's love right there.
Again, nothing about this sounds like my dream vacation.
This was amazing. There's a bunch of tourists from UK Everybody was UK, and they were telling me they get 8 weeks vacation.
They do, yeah.
8 weeks. And you know why? This was a quote from my neighbor. It's because our country is shit and it's cold and rainy all the time.
Everybody wants to go someplace and get away.
And they let you go somewhere else. Okay. What was the other thing? Oh, I also brought 4 bottles of sunscreen. I should have brought 5 because we ran out of sunscreen.
Well, good thing you were doing it. You still got pretty brown, though.
Yes, but I use sunscreen. Apparently, my Spanish never went away because I can most definitely understand it.
Yeah,
but just
it's easy
trying
to say tequila.
No, I don't drink tequila. I can say
Todd
baños.
does. That Todd does.
Baños. I can say
Margarita.
Baños. Margarita. So I became a Spanish speaker again, which, Barbie Huerita in her full...
Barbie Huerita.
Yeah, Barbie Huerita. We went there for a wedding, it was beautiful. It was on the beach. It was amazing. There's tons of seaweed there, I guess from the hurricane that had just happened.
Yeah.
It brought it all in. But at the reception, it's going back to it being hot and humid and sticky. The reception was outdoors by the pool, and we were dancing. And I grabbed the bride, and we jumped in the pool with all of our clothes on.
Geez.
And then everybody else jumped in the pool with their clothes on.
It must be pretty hot and humid if you're from Texas and you're saying it's hot and humid down there compared to here. It must have been really overwhelming.
Well, it reminded me of Corpus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Corpus Christi. So it totally reminded me of that. And our suite was beautiful. We had a walkout pool, like a private pool that connected to the larger pool. It was secluded and quiet. Unfortunately, for the rest of the my housemates down, in their own little private suite, my house became in the slums. My house became the party house. So the whole wedding party just kept ending up at
your place,
at our area.
So tell everybody where you went. And what the resort was? So
we went to Azul Beach Resort in Cancun, but it's a little town right outside of Cancun. I can't pronounce the name of the town.
Azul Beach Resort.
But then we went to Isla Mujeres and we went to Playa del Carmen, had some amazing Mexican food there, did some shopping.
Every time you sent a picture of you being on the ocean, I sent you a picture of a shark.
Yes. But you know what? We got Uber a couple of times from the hotel, and they were the nicest guys. When we first went to Playa del Carmen, the Uber driver, he said, "Hey, you can use me off the site," which you're probably not supposed to, which I know you're not. And we paid him $100, and he stayed there the whole time just waiting for us.
Oh, wow.
So he was very appreciative, and we gave him cash. Also, okay, here's another little tip. If you ever go to Mexico, bring a lot of ones, bring a lot of fives. Don't make sure all of your dollar bills don't have are not creased or have like a little cut out of them, because the Uber driver said that they won't take them. They'll take them, but they can't use them.
The bank won't take them?
The Mexicans can't use them to pay for something because it has a little tear on it. I don't know.
Any idea? Oh,
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's something we should research. I've never heard of that before.
But it was a cool trip. It's one of those trips where you go on and, we went with a group of people for a wedding, and it was great hanging out with the friends. But, sometimes you go to a place, you're like, been there, done that. I think I'm ready to go somewhere else. I love just relaxing by the beach and not doing anything for like a day. And then I want to do some museums.
Yeah, that's the way Holly
stuff.
and I are. We're like, okay, we're going to go someplace and relax for a little bit, but now, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to go out and do something, experience something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have the attention span of a gnat. So I wanted some little
activity. Apparently you do. Yeah. My story is nowhere near as exciting as that, but I wanted to talk about it real quick because we mentioned it on the podcast previously. The city council in Austin approved a plan a couple years ago for Cap Metro to purchase 197 buses at the cost to the city taxpayers of $255 million, which the city called an investment. Always cracks me up when they spend our money. Not our money because we don't live in Austin, but taxpayer money, and call it an investment. But after putting the plan in place, the company that they were ordering the buses from went bankrupt. Yeah, and they can't get the buses. And then they found out that most of the buses will only be able to do 95 miles on one charge, and only that less than 60% of the routes could be covered by those buses.
Oh.
So guess what? They threw the plan out the window.
So we're back to horse and carriage?
Yes, because that's very earth friendly, and all you got to worry about is the horse poop.
I want to get rid of those stupid scooters downtown. Like when I go down there, I bet you guys are runners. Those are
We
hazardous.
run around them all the time. It's gotten to the point where we'll push them off the trail if it's obvious that they, or drag them, because those things weigh like 60 pounds. You can't just roll them real easy. But it's an incredible nuisance, and they're not supposed to be on the Town Lake Trail, but they're all over.
People just dump them where they dump them, right?
Yeah. It's usually what happens. Like, I'm done, and they just leave it right there. Anyway, the city council cited that the largest producer of buses went bankrupt. There's no other suppliers. The lead times were 2 years plus when they first ordered them. Inflation made the cost of buses go up. Thank you, Joe Biden, for the inflation. No charging stations. And guess what? Now, they didn't throw the plan completely out the window. Now they're looking at hydrogen to run the buses. Yeah, there's your city council
Tequila.
at work. Yeah, that's
Tequila.
right. That's right.
Tequila. Speaking of traffic, guess what is starting soon? School.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
August 13th,
August
right?
13th, school is starting. I wanted to just kind of give a little shout out. I donate to these people, and it's an amazing organization, the Hays Caldwell Women's Center.
Yeah.
They're accepting donations for school clothes and supplies. So if you go to their website, it's the Hays Caldwell Women's Center. It's an amazing organization. They help women and children, victims of domestic violence, domestic abuse, and it's a good place to put your money. Good, safe place.
Yeah, we've donated to them a couple times, personally and through some of the organizations you and I are involved with. Yeah.
But dripping is growing. We all know this, right? And that new elementary school, number 6, they're not going to have.
This is the one in Headwaters?
The Headwaters are going to have 850 students. It's supposed to be finished the 25-26 school year. It was approved on a $223 million-ish bond back in May of 23, but the name hasn't been announced yet. And so it's going to be Springs or something Springs, whatever it is.
We talked about that it was going to be, we were kind of guessing
what it'll
might
be. The rezoning is not going to happen until the spring of this year. So wait until the neighbors page blows up and these people are ticked off because of the rezoning. But I would think it's in Headwaters. All the kids in Headwaters are going to go to the Headwaters school.
There's 850 kids in Headwaters. If that'll max it out, probably not.
Well, it's kind of like what Belterra did when we first moved here. Rooster Springs was brand new, and my kids were going to Rooster. And right when my youngest left, they were starting to rezone, so we had to go somewhere else. But they all got to go to Rooster. But along with that, we've had several people that have private schools here in town, which I think are a very good option. I think we have a really good mix of public, private, and homeschool opportunities here in Dripping Springs, which makes us very unique. But something kind of weird happened over this past week. The Dripping Springs Christian Academy closed without notice. People were expecting to send their kids there.
Just lock the doors.
They're saying that it's because of, quote, mold in the building and low enrollment. Now, if you're an OG Dripping Springs person, you've been here for a long time. We've talked about this in the past, mold and how it closed down.
Yeah, it closed down the elementary school like 25 years ago.
Ish. Oh,
Ish.
Was it? No, it wasn't that long ago.
It was before I moved here in 2003.
I don't know.
Which was 21 years ago.
I don't know, but I don't think it was that long ago. But anyways, I think that's very strange. So there's a lot of options like Sunrise Christian School.
Yeah.
The Kirkendalls have that. And, explore your options out there. There's a lot of options for your kids. We're also going to be at Convocation. That happens.
DSISD.
Yes.
Yeah, when this podcast releases, it'll have been a couple days ago.
Absolutely. But, with school starting, everybody's talking and top of mind is school safety.
Yeah.
And there's so many advancements nowadays. And what I really like, I heard you and I were both talking about this. They had a first responder, active shooter response training at Dripping Springs Elementary on July 26th. They had sirens, simulated gunshots. I think this is a good thing to be able to have something like this, some training for our officers and for our teachers. Not it's a good thing that we have to have this kind of training, but I think it's a good thing that this is.
So, yeah, and every school now has to have an armed school resource officer or school marshal.
Or a school, and they're also did that
Somebody's
reunification
armed
training.
at every campus. Yeah.
Yes, somebody is. And you know what? When our kids were in school, our oldest, we were fighting to get an SOR officer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but they did that reunification training also, and I didn't really understand what that was. Do you know what that is?
So I looked into that. That's if there's the school gets locked down, and maybe there is an active shooter, or there's not, maybe
Or there's some world event.
or a bomb threat or something.
Aliens.
How do you make sure? Yeah, because you got 400 kids out in a parking lot. How do you get them with the parents? And it's not always going to be the parents. Maybe somebody else is picking them up, but you can't. But the school is responsible to make sure that they go with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
25 years ago, the kids would all been in the parking lot and just slowly would have just kind of disappeared, and the teachers and the principal
There's
would
no
have assumed
accountability.
that they were all okay, and maybe they were, but now they have to have a plan in place to make sure that every child is protected all the way until they get to the next person that's responsible.
Well, I could see, God forbid, something happening on one of the campuses and somebody, a kid goes and hides in the theater room and is not coming out. Right. It is not coming out until somebody finds them, somebody safe finds them. But, along with the new school year, we have 3 new coaches.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
The dance teacher, we had Tracy on, and Kayla Roper is now taking over as the new dance teacher. We have a new golf teacher, David Briagini. I probably am butchering the poor guy's name. Coach David. We're going to just call him that. And then we have a new tennis coach, Carly Normett. So dripping is growing. There's many, many activities, and just watch out, pay attention, kiddos. It's going to be hard to get out of your neighborhood, but more importantly, watch for those little ones, because they will dart in between your cars and the buses and just.
There's a lot going on around here with traffic and kids and things going on. And so when school starts, be prepared. There's going to be a lot of kids that aren't exactly sure what they're doing, and parents that aren't exactly sure what they're doing, and new traffic patterns. And so just the first couple weeks, just be on high alert. Put your phones on Do Not Disturb while you're driving your kids to school, and just pay full attention.
Well, and during the summer, it's nice for us because we basically have free range of the city. But when school starts, we're like, I'm not going down there at 4:00. You want me to go somewhere to a client?
It's
I'm like,
true.
nope.
We do. We kind of schedule our day around it. Like, hey, Michelle, can you go to the post office? No, it's 4:00. I'm not going to the post office.
Scary down there. It's scary.
Hey, I've got my real estate minute.
Ooh.
And I thought this would be helpful for a lot of our listeners. Wire fraud cases in the U.S. have skyrocketed in the past 10 years, like just crazy amounts. So in 2015, the dollar amount of wire fraud in this country, meaning somebody scammed somebody and got them to wire money to the wrong account. In 2015 was $9 million. Mm-hmm. In 2022, it was $500 million, $500 million.
Well, I'm just going to say that nobody has accidentally wired me any of that money. That sucks.
I'll send you $2 today.
Thanks.
So cyber hackers have gotten really creative on scamming people. Uh-huh. And what they do is they will watch your email, and when there's a real estate transaction, they will wait for the opportunity to say, "Oh, okay, you need to send your down payment." Maybe they'll see a closing disclosure, and it shows that they have to wire $400,000. And then they will pretend to be the title company and send another email saying, "Oh, hey, you know what? We just changed banks. We've got new wiring instructions. Here they are." And then the unsuspecting buyer sends the money to some account overseas somewhere. That money is most often never returned. Never.
It makes me
received back.
Really, really sad, because I think a lot of it lies with their agent is not educating them that. And you've done such a great job, especially with some of our older clients that are not as technologically advanced, and just please call me.
I mentioned it to him like half a dozen times. And I want to point out there was a woman who's a Silicon Valley tech veteran. So she's pretty like a CEO or a high up in tech in Silicon Valley. Raina Robillard, She was buying a house in San Francisco in multiple offer situation. She won the bid. She got an email from her real estate broker saying, hey, you won the bid. Congratulations. Here's the wiring instructions. You have to send $400,000 right now to make sure that we get the bid. This is a pretty savvy person financially. She wired $400,000, gone, never got it back. Yeah. So it's not just unsophisticated people that are being taken advantage of. These hackers have gotten so good at what they're doing. Even somebody that's kind of in that financial world can be taken advantage of. So I got a couple quick tips for everybody.
I was going to say, how do you protect yourself against that?
First of all, you get an email and it says, here's our wiring instructions. And your first instinct is to, well, let me call them. And where do you normally think to get the number? You get it from the email. If they're scamming you, that email is somebody that's going to pretend to be the title company. So the title company says, and you're expecting it, it says, okay, you need to wire us $400,000. They send you the wiring instructions. Just open up a new browser window on your computer or your phone and type in whatever, patent title, Texas National Title, Dripping Springs, whatever it is. Go to their website. Get the phone number from the website, separate from any other thing, any correspondence you've received. Call them and say, hey, I got wiring instructions for you guys. I just want to verify it. Or go old school and walk in there and say, I got this email from you guys and I'm about to wire you $400,000. I just want to make sure. Is this legit? You can't be too careful. That's, in this world of Venmo and wiring and, huge amounts of money just transferring all over the place, you got to kind of step back when these big numbers, don't get caught up in it and be very careful, be very aware, and don't be embarrassed to ask multiple questions multiple times to make sure. Because if you wire a large amount of money, very seldom is that money ever retrieved. You can't just call your bank 2 hours later and they pull it back. Once it's left your account and the wire has been received on the other end, that money is more than likely never going to be found again.
I was going to ask you, in your research, did you figure out where's the majority of this money going? Some offshore
all over
account?
The world. These hackers are all over the world. They're in every continent. There's some in the United States, some in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, the Far East. They're just all over the world. So, you can get the FBI involved and maybe they can help track down the money, but more often than not, you've lost that money. I mean, for some people, a real estate transaction, say they sold their house.
That's their entire life savings.
We have many clients. They sell their house. They're using all of the proceeds from that house to pay cash for something else. If that money is stolen, their lives will never be the same.
I agree. That would be devastating.
Yeah. You can't be too careful. So I don't know. We're going to get John Burns, Justice of the Peace, Hays County Precinct 4 in here, but I'm sure in all his experience, he's seen some pretty wild things over the years.
He's an interesting guy, man. And his background, his just educational background is insane. So I want him to talk about that a little bit. And,
we're really lucky to have him come on the podcast, and I bet he's got some wild stories. Hopefully he can share them with us. So hang tight. We're going to take a little break and be right back with
Adios.
Judge Burns. Adios.
Are you tired of being left in the dark when the power goes out? Say goodbye to blackouts with Nomic Power Solutions.
As your full-service Generac dealer, they offer individually designed backup power solutions.
From start to finish, they've got you covered.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Nomic Power Solutions. Protect your home, protect your family, stay ready. Proudly sponsored by...
At Capital Farm Credit, they understand that owning land is more than just a transaction. It's a legacy, a future, and a place to call your own.
For generations, Capital Farm Credit has been the trusted lending partner for land loans, farmers, ranchers, and rural dreamers just like you.
Their personalized loan solutions cater to your unique needs, making the journey to land ownership smoother than ever.
Capital Farm Credit, your land, your legacy. Visit CapitalFarmCredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender.
Interior design should be an investment in your life and home. Let M. Elliott Studio transform your space, where interior design meets excellence in Central Texas.
Beyond just selecting colors and furnishings, team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, is a trained and licensed interior designer.
With her knowledge of architectural principles, building codes, space planning, and design theory, her team will work with you to understand your needs and lifestyle.
From concept to completion, M. Elliott Studio is committed to enhancing your space with a timeless and classic style.
Ready to redefine your space?
melliottstudio.com, 512-781-0224.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Mallet Integrity Team of real estate professionals. They are based in Dripping Springs and bring you over 45 years of combined experience helping people reach their hill country real estate dreams. When you want the best in town, call them at 512-829-2062 or look them up at malletintegrityteam.com. And now, here's Steve and Michelle.
And we're back with Judge John Burns, Justice of the Peace. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Michelle's been working on you for a while, I think. You're a busy, busy man.
She has been, that's correct.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up and how'd you end up in Dripping Springs?
Where I grew up, that's a great question. I was born in Utah in the middle of nowhere when my father was in the Army. I was actually born in an Army hospital in Tooele, Utah.
Tooele?
Tooele. My father was in the Chemical Corps, and they sent him out to Utah, where they have a big base where they used to do bad things. Anyway, by the time I was 10 years old, I lived in 5 different states.
Oh, wow.
Geez.
So a lot of I grew up mostly, I guess, in Southern California, but I left to go to college in 1971 and really never went back.
Oh, really?
You went to Ohio, right? Is that
Ohio State, yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I saw that. I mean, you were in Ohio, you were in California, Santa Clara University, you went to University of California, you also went to Baylor.
I was going to say, you really like this school thing, don't you?
One of these days, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, but I haven't done that yet. So.
Yeah. Tell us just some of your degrees. Just kind of go through some of the stuff that you have a degree in.
So I went to Ohio State on a Navy ROTC scholarship, and I initially wanted to go to medical school, and I have a bachelor's degree in microbiology. I went on active duty in the Navy the day I graduated.
Oh, wow.
Because I went to school on a Navy ROTC scholarship. That's how I could afford to go to school. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and both my parents were teachers, so not a lot of money. I got off active duty and went back and got a master's degree in microbiology. I decided I wanted to do medical research, so I ended up going to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston for a PhD. My PhD is in Virology and Epidemiology, which 4 years ago, no one had any idea what that meant, and now everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I did virus research for 10, 12 years.
Wow.
And then I realized I couldn't make enough money as a PhD research person to be able to raise 3 kids. So I went to law school to become a patent attorney. And I did biotechnology patent law for a handful of years and went to work for a company, and they morphed me into contract law and mergers and acquisitions and a variety of other areas of law that had nothing to do with patents. And I was the lead attorney in an acquisition that my company made. They bought a company here in Austin for $273 million, I believe.
Oh, little change.
Yeah.
I was the only attorney that was actively involved in that matter. So when the deal closed, I became the attorney here in the Austin building. And I was there for about 10 years, and I retired from corporate America. We moved out to Dripping Springs, and I opened a small legal practice, mostly doing not family law, but estate planning kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that the Justice of the Peace here, my predecessor, Terry Kyle, was retiring. And I decided this would be a good opportunity for me to help the community.
What does a justice of the peace do?
Primary job is to be a judge, but that's not our only job. We have a variety of jurisdictions. I can hear cases up to $20,000 in controversy, small claims cases, credit card debt cases. We hear all the evictions in the state, no matter what the value of the property.
Yeah.
We have a variety. We hear a lot of juvenile cases, school referrals, driving.
Can you marry somebody? Do you marry anybody over there?
I don't, but I could.
You could.
Isn't that's a thing that the justices of the peace used to do a lot, wasn't it?
That's what most people think of justice of the peace do, but there's a lot more than that. Additionally, in this county, we don't have a coroner.
Oh.
So when someone dies out here, typically the justice of the peace has to sign the death certificate, which means I go to a lot of death scenes and
You have to declare them. Wow.
Well, you put that on your bio
Yeah, I
that
saw
you
that.
work with bereaved people at death scenes, and I did. When I read that, I was like, "Wait a minute, what? How?" So that makes sense. But tell us about that. That's got to be really hard on you.
It all depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point where it's an opportunity. Frequently, you'll go to a scene and you find parents or a spouse or family, and even if they knew it was coming, the finality of it is just overwhelming. And you have the opportunity to talk with them and try to help them through this time, because tomorrow will come, and they might not understand that, but they can get through it. And you try to encourage them. You try to convince them that there will be a tomorrow. I always give them my business card with my personal cell number on it, and tell them to call me anytime they need anything. And it's an opportunity for me to try to help those people.
Is that because I think a lot of times people fall down when they're just sort of forced into those situations where they're there trying to comfort somebody? Is that what you would suggest in most cases, that people say is, hey, tomorrow's going to come, that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, just get through the next? Is that what you would recommend?
Right. And they're in a state of shock.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's a suicide or totally unexpected. But even if it's not, they're in a state of shock, and you have to try to do the best you can to convince them that it's going to be all right, that life will go on, and things will get better. It'll never be gone, but it'll get easier with time. And that's what you have to do.
Wow.
You also mentioned dealing with the Dripping Springs juvenile system, the juveniles that are kind of referred either from school or, whatever was going on in their life. What are we as Dripping Springs residents seeing in our juveniles right now? What are some of the biggest issues? I know you mentioned vaping before we got on the air.
The biggest issue I see in my court is vaping. And sometimes it's nicotine vapes, sometimes it's THC vapes, which are really never legal. In Texas, the law for vapes and any kind of tobacco product is now 21, and they changed the law 2 or 3 years ago. Some people don't know that.
So you can't. So nicotine vaping, a nicotine pen, you have to be 21. Really, I didn't realize that either.
You can't have any kind of tobacco products, including nicotine vapes, until you're 21.
You can't have dip, cigarettes, anything. Oh, wow.
And the exception is if you're military on active duty,
I was going to say,
then
you can
need
go
to be 18 or something.
Okay.
But they were unaffected. But everybody else needs to be 21. And you can't get it off your record until you're 21.
Wow.
A lot of things you can get off your record when you're 18. But alcohol and tobacco, 21, because you can't have it till you're 21. And that's just the way the law is.
You talked about the THC vaping. That isn't legal under any circumstances, right? Because it's a highly concentrated.
Right. It's the nicotine. I'm not sure what the concentration of the THC is in the THC vapes. The concentration of nicotine in a nicotine vape is shocking.
Really?
Compared to a cigarette.
One vape has the equivalent of 40 cigarettes.
Oh my
2
gosh.
packs. And there's a reason for that. The companies that sell them want to get the kids addicted. because they make a lot of money selling vapes for years and years to come because they're addicted to nicotine. And that's one of my pet peeves. The original big player in the vape industry was a company called Juul.
Yeah.
They were a San Francisco area startup in 2015, tiny startup with no money. They were acquired in 2018, less than 3 full years later, by a tobacco conglomerate who paid almost $13 billion dollars.
Jeez.
They had the market share, and the company that acquired them owned Philip Morris and Marlboro, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
They were looking to replace their cigarette revenue that was going downhill. And Juul had targeted the young people, and they were all doing Juul vapes.
Do you think that the parents are a little bit more jaded in that sense when it's a vape? You're like, well, at least it's not marijuana. It's just vape. It's just a nicotine.
Or a cigarette.
Well, part of it is I think some parents don't view it as seriously as a cigarette. But it's a big status symbol with the kids. I mean, some of them get caught vaping in the classroom with the teacher there. And it's a game. The teacher turns around to the board, the kid vapes, blows a puff of smoke in the air. All their friends are impressed, they think. The teacher turns around, the cloud is gone, and it's a big game.
I used to substitute at the high school for many years ago, but maybe 8-9 years ago when I stopped substituting, and I had a group of kids that was when those Juuls first came out, and they were vaping. And I lost my marbles with those kids, just absolutely lost it. And I told them that the cameras outside in the hallway were now pointed. But I feel like these kids, you're right. It's just something to be cool. And it's like, oh, well, at least it's not.
And going back to what you were talking about with Juul, they were putting like
the flavors,
candy flavors in there to even more of a reason for the kids to get addicted. Right. They thought it was almost like just eating a regular candy.
They targeted the kids. They had Tutti Frutti flavor and bubble gum and mango. And
scary.
It was intentionally targeting, and finally the FDA put them out of business. But the whole goal was to get juveniles addicted to nicotine to replace a revenue stream that the company that acquired Juul was losing because many adults were finally caught on that cigarettes do kill you, and they were not smoking as much.
When I was growing up, the tobacco companies, the cigarette companies were some of the largest companies in this country, like, the rivaling GM and Ford, and I think that's diminished some, but they still have quite a bit of control. Have you looked to see what a carton of cigarettes costs now at H-E-B?
You know what? My mom,
I think it's like $100.
When I was a kid, my mother smoked, and I was probably like 9 or 10 years old. My mom would give me a $5 bill and say, "Go
down to the
with
store.
a note. Here's a note. Get a gallon of milk, and a carton of a pack of cigarettes." But I think living in Dripping Springs, I think people have this misconception that look, our schools are amazing schools, but because we have a higher wealth kind of demographic here, that people think, oh, maybe they're a little bit more protected. But the more money you have, the more expensive the problems are, right? Are you finding?
Yeah, when I have juveniles in court, I first of all, in Texas, until you're 17, if you get called to court, you have to bring your parent. And I will tell the kids in front of their parent, your parent isn't going to pay your fine, and they're not going to pay your court costs. And then I'll ask them if they have a job. And if they do, I'll give them a choice of paying the costs, or I give them community service.
Oh, yeah.
And because it doesn't do any good for someone who's living in a multi-million-dollar house to
Daddy to bail him out.
Pay $300 for a traffic ticket or something.
Right.
They don't care. That's no consequence.
Yeah.
And the kid learns nothing. My goal is to try to make the kids learn something, and I try to convince them they have to drive at a reasonable speed, and I always tell them to set their cruise control when they get on the highway. I had a kid one time doing 116 miles an hour on 290.
Oh, my gosh. Geez.
And he had 16 years old, and he had with him in his car 2 16-year-old classmates, which was also illegal.
Yeah.
And he was just showing off.
I see a lot of these kids that think they are Mario Andretti, which some of our younger listeners probably don't know who that is, but they think they have the talent of a professional racing driver just because they got their license a year ago and
Or
they've
because
seen a couple of
they
car
play
chase scenes.
They play their games.
Yeah, and they don't. And they're way in over their head.
Absolutely. And they don't really understand
The consequences.
the force that vehicle
right.
has when it's going
Yeah.
15 miles an hour.
Remind us, you just said something, because it's been a while. My oldest is 24 now, so it's been a while since I've had a 16-year-old. But remind us the law about a 16-year-old driving with other 16-year-olds.
They can't drive with other minors in the car.
Unless they're related, right?
I think they have to be 21.
I thought they could have a family member with them.
I can't
If
remember
I can't remember what it is. I'll have to look it up while you guys talk.
Judge, have you had kids come in, vaping obviously, but have you had kids coming into court where you're seeing harder drugs, cocaine or heroin or fentanyl, or have you seen any of that?
Cocaine and heroin don't go to my court.
Okay.
Since I've been justice of the peace, I've done 2 heroin overdose deaths.
Oh, jeez.
And I've done 5 fentanyl deaths.
Were those all in this general area, or was that Hays County?
One of the fentanyl deaths was in San Marcos.
Okay.
One of the heroin deaths was in Wimberley. But I've had a heroin death in Dripping Springs and 4 fentanyl deaths.
Wow.
I had 0 fentanyl deaths till 2023. From 2019 to 2022, 0 fentanyl deaths. Since then, I've had 4 in this precinct.
Gosh.
And our precinct goes from the Travis line to the Blanco line and most of Driftwood. So we're probably 30,000 people.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Do you think that's because of the drugs pouring over the southern border now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've had several people tell me, in passing, that they think some of them are law enforcement. There's drug cartel activity in Hays County.
Jeez, gosh, man.
And yeah, it's a scary thing. But when there's no controls and these people come across the border, some of them are coming over with bad intentions.
Mm-hmm. I think the majority of people right now coming over the border or have bad intentions.
I think a lot. I think not. I don't even know if it's a lot. Some of them are just seeking a better life, but some of them definitely have.
Well, yeah, I can totally agree with that. I'm a border girl. I grew up down in the valley, and I can understand that. But I think that the majority of the people now that are crossing over are draining our systems. It's disgusting is what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
I attribute a lot of that problem with fentanyl, at least, to the border stuff. I've heard from people that know that there are fentanyl manufacturing facilities in Mexico near the border. And I've been told they're being funded by China, and the cartels are involved with the people from China, and they're running it across the border, and they're putting it in anything. One of the fentanyl deaths was like a UPS driver who had bought a Xanax to stay, not a Xanax, but something to keep,
Adderall or something?
No, something to keep him awake, a stimulant, and it was laced with fentanyl, and it killed him.
We were talking earlier on our monologue. I just got back from Mexico on a vacation, and I was saying that there were no avocados to be found because the cartel has now taken over the avocado trade because the marijuana trade. It was harder because different states now have it legal. And so I thought it was like ironic. It's like sex trafficking or human trafficking, and avocados is what they're doing. And then, of course, we have the fentanyl issue. But I think you touched on something very, very important, is that these kids think they're buying just an Adderall, right? And it's cut with this fentanyl. Adults or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people that I've seen that have died from it, I don't think they realize what they're playing with. I don't think they realize, how powerful fentanyl is, or they don't even realize there's fentanyl in their marijuana or fentanyl in their, their stimulant, whatever it is they've got. So it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And there is a human toll, and Unfortunately, I've seen too much of it. I mean, any is too much.
Yeah, it's scary.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and ask about what's been going on with the county clerk's office down in San Marcos, and how, if any, has that affected your office?
It's not the county clerk, it's the district clerk.
The district clerk.
So there are 3 tiers of trial court systems in Texas. There's the justice of the peace courts, justice courts, and I'm a justice court judge, a justice of the peace. Then there's a county court system, and they will hear higher level cases and misdemeanor crimes. We can only hear at my level only Class C misdemeanors. Then there's a district court where there's no limit. They can hear capital murder cases and unlimited civil cases. So it's the district clerk.
That was the issue
that's
where
the
he
top
just
of the-
resigned. Okay.
That's right. That's the top of the totem pole, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
And frankly, they hired a 19-year-old kid who admitted apparently that he ran as a joke. And my guess is when he found out how much the job paid, at 19 years old, that's more money they can possibly make doing anything besides playing Major League Baseball.
I think 85% of his staff quit too.
I think that's probably correct.
What's going on right now with that office being vacant?
I don't really know, but my experience with the court, with the district clerk's office, they're responsible for sending out all the jury summons. My court has had 4 jury summons go out since that person took over, was elected. The first 2 times the jury summons went out for my court in Dripping Springs, and the cards they went out and said grand jury summons.
Oh.
The grand jury only meets in San Marcos, and so I had people who received them here and went to San Marcos for jury duty. The 3rd time, it was correctly identified as my court, but the address to show up to was not my court address. It was the address for the county court at the government center in San Marcos, Stagecoach Trail.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
So we had people going to the wrong place, people that were totally confused. And finally, it was the 4th time they got it right. But it's unacceptable in my mind for that to go on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just people not knowing what they're doing. And if they blamed it on the computer software that sends them out, but somebody put in the wrong cards twice that said grand jury summons. That's just not, that's inattention to detail. And in the legal profession.
Do you remember what percentage of the vote he got when he won that?
I don't have, he ran, I think, well, that's not right. He beat a very experienced incumbent.
And who had been there for a long time.
Like 30 years. And she was going around, she was involved with the state district clerks organization, and she was giving training to various people. And she got dumped.
That's scary to me.
This person was 19, and the only thing they had going for them was they had a D after their name on the ballot.
That's right. It's all because somebody voted right on that party line, not because of experience.
That actually sort of segues into one of my questions. So the people that voted for him, I feel like, and I could be wrong, that some of the youth now are starting to wake up to how messed up the system of government in some levels, all the way to the top, is. Are you seeing that, where maybe some of the youth are starting to go, hey, this system doesn't really work for our country?
I hope you're right. I haven't seen that. I think that my experience, having worked with the high school for 6 or 7 years with the mock trial program, which I think is now gone defunct.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's really too bad, because it was a great program. But my impression is that an awful lot of them were drinking the Kool-Aid.
Really?
But there's an awful lot of peer pressure. I remember when Trump won the first time, there was a lot of angst in the media, and the story was, well, there's a lot of people who were afraid to say they were voting for Trump, and they were afraid to put a Trump sign in their yard, so they were underrepresented when they were doing polling. There's so much peer pressure on these kids now that for them to come out and say they were pro-Trump, that's a big issue to a lot of them. Yeah. And I know there's some of them that do it, but it's a challenge.
Well, they're not paying taxes. They're not.
I and maybe this is just anecdotal, but I see, and it's on social media, which I know you don't like, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's men who have been vilified for serving masculine roles in society, now pushing back, and for a while, I think the men were okay with being feminized, now saying,
No more.
it is okay for me to have a role in society as a masculine male. That's kind of where I was sort of reading into it, that some people are waking up and saying, you can't try and change us into something that we're not, and we're going to push back on that, because there is a level of government at the very top that's trying to do that, do away with all masculinity and dual roles, a role for women in society, which they most certainly have, and a primary role, and then the role for men. That was kind of where I was getting it from.
I think they have to care enough to go vote, though, too. I think right now, the Democrats, in my opinion, are banking everything for this younger generation on the abortion issue and on the women's right to choose. And I think there's a lot of other issues that need to be looked at.
Great. So can I ask you, Judge, what we're hearing a lot in the media is that the Supreme Court outlawed abortion in this country. Is that right? As a judge,
No,
is that what you saw happen?
That is not at all what happened. That's conveying a message that certain people want to tell, but it's not accurate at all.
Mm-hmm.
The recent Supreme Court case did not outlaw abortion at all. What it said was this is a state issue and the state should decide, and they left it to each individual state to decide for that state, do they want to allow abortion or not? And some states have said, yes, we want to have abortions in the state, they're legal, and other states have said no.
And put restrictions on them.
And put restrictions on them. And so the restrictions aren't the issue. To me, the issue is states now make the decision, not a national level. So they did not at all outlaw abortion, but it serves people's agenda to misrepresent the truth. And I was an intelligence officer for a long time. There's so much misinformation and disinformation. If you repeat a lie enough times, people believe it. And that's what the media is doing.
It's a soundbite world now.
It's almost like it's actually like, I remember being a kid and reading about brainwashing, and it's like brainwashing on a national level now.
That's
you
right.
just repeat it over and over and over, and
gaslighting, brainwashing. Oh, you and I were talking earlier, and I said, in my opinion, I have a daughter, and this is my opinion. I have a daughter, and if we care so much about women's rights, then why aren't we doing anything about men competing in women's sports? And so this is where that's where I stand there. And you don't like it, email me.
Yeah,
but
no, I think we're falling down in this country about that. There is, and you're seeing it in the Olympics. There's apparently in the female boxing, there's going to be two people with XY chromosomes boxing each other, which that's
women's
basically two men boxing for the gold medal in the women's boxing.
But let's champion women's rights.
Yeah, I know.
Let's champion.
So a couple other follow-ups on that. Have any states come out and said absolutely no abortions ever? I don't think they have. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think they have.
The ones that have put laws in place about abortion, generally they're restrictions.
Right. And, that's my understanding too, but I don't follow that issue terribly closely.
Right.
I mean,
and so now, and I hope I'm not getting too political, but now the Biden administration and Vice President Harris are running on this. Part of what they're running on is that we need to get control of the Supreme Court, and they want to get control of it by imposing some kind of oversight authority. And there was one
on the Supreme Court. Oh, the term limits, which I think is hilarious. They want to do term limits on the Supreme Court, but they don't want to impose those same restrictions on members of Congress.
Well,
God forbid. You can be limited by your term, but
So those two things. Tell us from a judge's point of view, what are the problems with that, with the oversight and with the term limits?
Well, the term limit issue is a way to change the composition of the court whenever you please.
Right.
The founding fathers put in the Constitution that federal judges serve for life, with the idea that they weren't going to be beholden to running for re-election every 3 or 4 or 6 years, and they had to please their voting public rather than do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it's been in this country since they started the system. And that applies to federal district court judges all the way up to the Supreme Court. And it's been that way for 250-ish years. And there was a reason for that. But when the court does things you don't like, then you talk about term limits and you talk about a code of ethics, which means we want to target certain judges, and they've already done it.
Yep.
They're only talking about two of the Supreme Court justices who happen to be pretty hardcore conservatives. And they're concerned about the fact that their spouses have a political voice. And that's kind of too bad. If you're the spouse of a judge, you don't give up any of your rights.
Yeah. Well,
And
You're talking about, I think, was it Lieut whose wife put some kind of a flag up at their home?
right, and Thomas.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Thomas and Alito.
Yeah, Thomas was because he has a friend who's wealthy that took them on a trip or something like that, right?
I think that's true, but my understanding is, and I haven't followed it closely, that benefactor or whatever you term that friend is, I understand has never had a case in front of the Supreme Court.
That's
So
true. I read that just recently that, he's never had anything that's
you
been
can't
involved
buy,
in anything.
You can't buy influence if there's nothing to influence.
Right. Well, so, yeah, those stories are just to try and discredit so that some people say, oh, yeah, we need to have some oversight. The big issue with the oversight is now you have, well, first of all, who gives the oversight? Now you have some undue influence on the Supreme Court to have them make decisions so that pleases this oversight, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's scary to me.
I think also that now, given the last 3-4 years, that our justice system has been politicized and has been used now to go after a political opponent. And, I think everything that happened in New York was a farce, 100%. And
Are you talking about the Trump trial?
I think the Trump trial. Yeah, I think it. And I think that just all of the trials that were getting brought up, and I think the other thing you were talking about was the presidential immunity. They were trying to limit that presidential immunity is one of the other things.
What did you think about that? The big case in New York that he lost.
Yeah, did you follow that closely?
That's being
Well, he's lost
challenge.
2 of them in New York. One was a civil case, and they were threatening to take Trump Tower from him.
Yes.
And he won on appeal that he didn't have to do that.
And that was a real estate issue. We were we were talking about that as far as what the value of Mar-a-Lago was.
My understanding is none of these charges in any court was filed until a day or two after Trump announced he was going to run for president.
Well, they actually changed the law to make them. They changed the law to make some of these things illegal that they were saying that he was doing.
Well, my understanding is in the criminal case in New York, first of all, they've combined 2 different alleged crimes to justify making this a felony.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the crimes that the state of New York is using to leverage is a federal law where they have absolutely no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I can't in my court use law from a different state or, use other law that's not binding on me.
Or also out of the statute of limitations as well.
But they wrangled it into the statute of limitations by this combination. And from what I've read from legal scholars, there's no chance that's going to stand up on appeal. The appeal won't occur until after the election.
Yeah.
so.
And I've heard people unfortunately say, I would never vote for a convicted felon. And that's what the Dems are running on.
That was the whole
Trump
purpose.
is a convicted felon.
So
And there's also a reason why these cases are being done in Atlanta, Georgia, in Washington, D.C., and New York City, where 80 to 90 to 95% of the voters voted for Joe Biden 4 years ago. That's heavy blue country, and there's no way you're going to get a reasonable jury there.
Well, it's not even about red or blue anymore. It's just about politicizing the system. It's like the same principles would apply to the other person. It's like it's an unfair system.
Yeah.
It bothers me a lot that in these document cases, Trump is being held accountable. Trump is going on trial criminally What Joe Biden did was much worse because they found documents in multiple places, like stashed in his garage.
Next to the Corvette.
Yeah.
And the attorney that was appointed by the Justice Department to investigate came back and basically said, oh, he's an old man and the jury would have sympathy on him. Therefore, we're not going to prosecute. Why are you prosecuting Trump? One. And this was the same assistant attorney general who was first responsible for the Hunter Biden investigation. And he said no charges. And there was such an uproar, they gave that case to someone else who pressed charges and now has criminal convictions on Hunter for his gun stuff.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being a judge of that level, and you're having an elderly gentleman come in his 80s, and regardless of his crime, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to give you a pass on this one because you're just too old for me to hear.
Well, why did the media and Kamala Harris hide from the public what bad shape Joe Biden was in?
That's the big thing for me is like
What was
he's
known?
obviously been incapacitated for quite some time, and that's a huge cover-up on many, many levels.
In addition, he's allowed to continue being president.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, that's we
So
went down a big old rabbit hole, didn't we?
This politicizing of the judicial system, which I believe obviously it's happening now. Is it unprecedented? Is this, or do you know in history has this kind of thing happened before? In my
this
lifetime,
country?
I feel like it's unprecedented, but I don't know that.
Nixon,
for sure.
look what they did to Nixon.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
same thing happened to Nixon. Nixon was a very, very popular president. Very popular president.
It's my understanding that at one time in the 30s, FDR tried to pack the Supreme Court. I'm not familiar with any of the details about that, but I've heard it recently. Historically, I think you can't it's hard to take your personality out of being a judge. You have to do what you think is right or wrong. And sometimes that doesn't go well with popular opinion.
Right.
And some people cave into that and some people stick with their guns and might not get reelected.
You brought up a very good point, though, is that if you are either appointed or elected a judge, regardless, your primary goal and job is to follow the rule of law.
Yes, sir.
And you need to get out of your own moral dilemma, personal feelings. You have to put those aside because you are obligated for the oath that you took to follow the rule of law. Why do I feel personally, why do we have so many judges that are compromised on that? Why is that basic lesson not being followed now? Money?
Some of it's money. I've struggled with my viewpoint on some of this, not only judges, but other politicians. I think we have an awful lot of compromised public officials.
I have to agree with that. Yeah.
I don't have any idea how some of these people can stay in their positions of authority. And I'm drawing a blank on his name. The minority leader in the Senate, the guy from Kentucky.
I can see his name, but I can't say. Okay,
look
keep
it up
going.
real quick. Keep going, and we'll look it up.
Well, I think he's done a really bad job.
Yeah.
But he continues to have the majority of the Republican senators vote for him to stay in there. Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
McConnell, yeah.
And his nickname is China Mitch, and there's evidence that he, along with the Biden family, have taken huge amounts of money from China for influence purposes. Why did the majority of Republican senators keep voting to keep Mitch McConnell in that spot? And you would think they would want the right person for the job, not who someone else wants to have in that job.
Well, maybe they don't think they can overcome the other people, the other people that want to keep him in place. I mean, they don't think they can get enough votes to have everybody.
Well, and that may be the case because there's been a real free-for-all when they changed Speaker of the House from Kevin McCarthy, and now it's Johnson.
Mike Johnson.
It's that they didn't do well when they tried to resolve that problem.
Yeah.
But it bothers me that we have officials who I don't think necessarily are voting in the best interest of the country or their state or their jurisdiction.
And you know what's funny about that now is it seemed like when I was growing up, you kind of knew that they weren't doing, but now it's just right out in the open. They're not even trying to cover it up anymore. They're like, oh, I'm just going to do what's good for me. And, I come in here and I make $170,000 a year, but I've been up here for 10 years and my net worth went from $1 million to 28 million, but everything's just fine. I think that's one of the biggest reasons. If anybody asks me why I'm conservative, I think our government has gotten way too big, way too bloated, and way too intrusive. And there's a lot of people up there that don't know what they're doing. And the ones that are smart enough are manipulating it to their own best interest.
I agree. And I what I want to know is, how do you think, with all, it seems at times so far removed, Washington, D.C. just feels like another world, right? So how does all of that BS affect us on a local level? And I think...
we talk about that a lot, Judge, on the show about, okay, maybe we can't control what's happening in the Senate and the Congress, but we can control what happens here locally. So what can we? Going on Michelle's point here, what can we do locally here to make the country a better place?
Or Dripping Springs. You're a citizen of Dripping Springs, right? So we're in your precinct area. How, as a parent of a teenager or tax-paying members of Dripping Springs, what can we do to try to make this
I think
place?
there's three things. First of all, you need to be knowledgeable about who the candidates are when it comes time to vote. And that means you get out of your comfort zone and you go do some background investigation. And Facebook isn't necessarily the great place to do, fact checking or investigating about particular candidates. Most candidates have a website, and they're going to have on their website information about them. I had people come up to me the first time I ran for office, 2018, because I went in office 2019. They came up to me on voting day and they said, we voted for you because we read your website and you have a plan and you have goals. I think most candidates have that information out there. I think there are also meet and greets or candidate forums where you can go and ask these people
physically ask them questions.
Physically ask them questions. Yeah. And if you don't want to ask them in public, talk to them afterwards. I think we also need to have viable candidates. And right now, it's people who run for public office sometimes get so vilified in the process that people in their right mind don't want to do it.
Yeah, the good people say, I'm not subjecting myself and my family to that. So they stay out. And then we get people maybe of lesser ability that actually step up and run.
And that happens.
And the people that are running, they're getting pulled through the ringer. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think you need to become involved in your community.
Yes.
And whether it means you volunteer at your kid's school or whether you get involved with, the Rotary or the Lions Club or Toastmasters or some kind of a community organization. If you live in the city of Dripping Springs, go to the city council meetings.
Well, you moved here for a reason, right? You chose this place for a reason. So protect it.
Well, I agree with that. You mentioned earlier, how does what happened nationally impact us? Well, we already talked about that with fentanyl. Fentanyl is impacting us today because what's happening nationally, and then whatever Abbott wants to do isn't enough. So we are being impacted by them, but we can also have a better Dripping Springs or Central Texas or state of Texas by being involved and supporting candidates and becoming informed.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So you have a PhD in virology and epidemiology from Baylor College of Medicine.
As if our podcast wasn't already controversial today.
That is correct.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts back in 2020, 2021, when, the response that this country had to COVID? What were you, with your background in all of that, what were you thinking at the time?
It's very frustrating. A massive overreaction. I think there's a fair chance that that virus was bioengineered in a lab in China. I can't prove it, but I suspect the fact that this outbreak happened within 5 miles of the Chinese bioweapons lab is an interesting coincidence. And the fact that the media and the NIH tried to cover up that connection for a long time is troubling at best. Coronavirus typically causes respiratory infections in this case that for most people isn't terribly bad. In order to get these vaccines created and used, they had to use an experimental use exemption, which means there is no other drug that works. Myrna, which is one of the companies that made one of the leading vaccines and made a fortune on it, to my knowledge, never had a vaccine approved before this. They got their COVID vaccine approved under this exemption. Shortly after they got approval, they settled a lawsuit with the NIH for $400 million. Some of the people in NIH, undisclosed scientists, claimed that they were co-inventors and they were entitled to a share of the profit. Oh my gosh. $400 million was paid to NIH. We have no idea who or where that money went, but it went to people who claimed they were inventors. And this was all because we couldn't have a drug that worked. Because if ivermectin worked, if hydroxychloroquine worked, if azithromycin worked, none of this would have been allowed. So none of that could have worked. And surprisingly, it didn't.
That's why they demonized all the other drugs.
Yeah. If I got COVID, I tested positive for it. I went to a local physician who put me on an ivermectin protocol. I was better in 4 hours.
Really? Wow.
I felt better in 4 hours. I was fine in 2 days. And I'd already had 2 vaccines, which I got because my mother at the time, who's now 92, was living with us, and she was in a high-risk group. But instead of dealing with the high-risk groups reasonably, we didn't do that. We dealt everybody the same way. And it's my understanding that both New York and New Jersey, I believe, maybe it was Massachusetts, had a regulation that if people got sent from nursing homes to hospitals and they tested positive, when the hospital was ready to release them, whether they were positive or not, the nursing home had to take them back. So you're taking COVID-positive people back to the high-risk group. And
so the reaction actually probably had created more deaths than if they'd had just left that alone.
Population control.
Yeah, and
Conspiracy theory.
The Resdemivir, I'm not sure ever worked very well. We had a guy who did some construction for us out of a ranch in San Saba County. He had a kidney problem. They put him on that, and he was dead in 12 hours.
Oh, my gosh.
And there's no excuse for it. It was just, I don't think a lot of doctors really understood, and all these things were being rushed out to them because someone was making a lot of money on them. My
rheumatologist gave me a plethora of hydrochloroquine during that time.
I try not to fall into, I'm using air quotes, conspiracy theorist stuff. And when you're describing that, Judge, it actually makes me very nervous because for that all to happen, so many people have to be involved in making that, from the top down to people, like you say, people at the NIH, people in the media. And when I say media, I mean podcasts,
Joe Rogan. Look how Joe Rogan was vilified. He just talked. He had that special, that live special, and I watched it. And he talked. He goes, how many times I've tried to been canceled. And he said, when Prince Harry goes out and starts saying, "Oh, there's this guy that's talking about ivermectin, and he's giving false information about COVID." Yeah, and he's like, saying. "Did I? And he goes, "I'm a comedian. I'm the last person you want to be taking.
You should rely on for medical advice.
Taking advice from."
But so when Trump was president After COVID started, every day the media gave you the death count.
Oh, yeah, I remember
I
that.
remember that.
The
Yeah.
day that Biden became president,
Yeah, it stopped.
you never heard another
No.
word. And I don't know it's true, but I've heard that more people have died from COVID since Biden's been in office than when Trump was in
I
office.
read that too. If you're somebody that's listening to the show and you're not very political,
We apologize.
well, yeah, I apologize, but just that fact alone, that for however many years that was, 3 years, every news outlet had that death thing, that little rotating thing at the bottom, and then Biden becomes president and they take that away. That alone should make you nervous.
Wake
about what's
up or
happening.
wake up.
Yeah, that alone should make you go, wait a minute.
Was I
what's
being
going on?"
manipulated? What was somebody trying to sway
That's,
me?
You know what? That's a really good point. That's one of the things that drives me nuts about this country right now is that there are millions and millions of people that know they're being manipulated on their social media, TikTok or whatever, and they just go along with it. They just like, oh, that's okay. You know, I'll just go ahead and spout out these little talking points that I saw on TikTok today. That drives me crazy.
And they're not unintelligent people.
No,
Right?
I know some very smart people that say the dumbest things I've ever heard. It's true. It's true.
Isn't that the truth?
I know people that
Isn't
are
that the
really,
truth?
really smart, and sometimes they say things to me, and I go,
And people that you
"What?
respect."
Where are you getting that?"
Yeah.
Let's segue a little bit because we're going to run out of time. Judge, you're really involved in the community. I read through your bio about some of the things you do, and what calls you to be so. Tell us about some of the things you do, and then tell us what calls you to be so involved in the
And
community.
service-minded. You
Yeah.
really are.
I think if you want to make change in your community, if you want to have a positive effect, you need to be involved. And I've been in leadership positions for most of my life. I started out as the oldest of 5 kids, and I had a number of leadership positions in Boy Scouts, and I went through Navy on an ROTC scholarship, which the day I graduated, I was an ensign in the Navy, and I had people reporting to me, and it's just been kind of a way of life.
So you said you were bossy.
So I had one of my troops one time told me, don't ever let anybody call you a boss, because a boss is a double SOB spelled backwards.
Oh, I'm going to steal that one.
Anyway, I thought that was humorous. But by being involved in your community, you can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, I was in Rotary Club for a number of years, and then I had a conflict. I just couldn't continue. They're a great group, and I respect what they do, and I'm thankful for them. I'm currently the commander of the VFW post, or not the VFW, the American Legion post
Really?
here in Dripping Springs. I'm also the vice president of the board of directors for the Hill Country Senior Center. And I've been involved in the Dripping Springs Toastmasters for about 7 years. I've been president twice and held a number of other offices. I was involved with the mock trial, and I mentioned this earlier, at the high school for 6 or 7 years, which was a great program. They would frequently end up with 100, 150 kids involved in the program. So some of them wanted to be lawyers when they graduated, but for some of them, it was just an introduction to the legal system. So I thought that was a great opportunity.
That should almost be mandatory for youth, but go ahead.
Well, it was a great program, and it seems to have fallen by the wayside. I try really hard to be very active with the school district. Until recently, I've sworn in all the new board members for the Board of Trustees.
Oh,
I didn't this last June because it was 2 weeks after I had a hip replacement, and I just couldn't do it.
Oh, right.
But
you couldn't hobble over there and
well, I could have, but I had someone else who would volunteer to do it, and 2 weeks after hip surgery is not fun. But anyway, my advice is don't get old. I'll just give you that one right now.
Yeah, you're telling me.
But if you're involved in your community, you learn a lot of information, you get contact with people,
you care about your community.
and you care
know.
about your community. And I think that's important. Just like getting to know your candidates, getting to know your community and finding out where you can help or just becoming more knowledgeable, I think is invaluable.
Yeah.
And the Dripping Springs newspaper, I think, is, how many people read newspapers anymore? And it comes out, I think, once a week.
Yeah.
So it's just not a good source of information. And
Well, Dripping Springs Neighbors has been the Dripping Springs newspaper of the late. But, I've actually seen a couple of things I've been surprised about. something has happened at a particular business. Someone goes on there and just trashes them. And the business turns around and steps up and takes ownership and says, it most recently happened at the Stay and Play. Most recently, they come back and they say, you know what? We take ownership of this. You're right. This happened.
Sorry, this happened. This is what we're going to do.
We're going to make changes. And that's what you want, right? You want somebody, especially, I mean, it's hard being a business owner. It's hard being a small business owner. You want somebody to take ownership of that. But it's been such a pleasure. I have a couple of cute little. We're gonna shift just for a second because if anybody else is listening, so I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. What was your favorite TV law show that you watched? Do you watch TV?
I don't watch TV very often.
I was going to say, do you have time?
I don't watch.
Did you watch lawyer shows?
No.
Not what was that? What was that lawyer show that was
Ironsides?
No, what was the? I can't. Okay, so skip that one. That one failed. What's your favorite quote or motto that guides you in your life? What is something that you tend to kind of funnel
There's a couple of them. One of them is from, I think, Winston Churchill, and it's never, never, never give up.
Yep, that's a big one.
There's another one by Calvin Coolidge about perseverance, and it's like a paragraph long. But the bottom line is there are people who are brilliant that fail. There are people who have all the talent in the world that fail. It's perseverance that determines the outcome most of the time.
That's so true.
And I find that to be absolutely true. And you're not going to be able to change, for the most part, your IQ or whether you can throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball or not. But you can continue to try, and when everybody else quits, if you're still trying, you're probably going to win. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand today. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
There are a lot of people that give up on things right before they're about to hit it, make it work. Yeah. You just got to keep getting up every day and doing it.
That's why we keep doing this podcast. If you could write one law, any law, what would it be? Didn't even have to make sense.
I would like to find a way to get people motivated, to get people to care. I struggle with juveniles in court all the time who just don't care. And how do you reach them? I also struggle with parents who want to be friends and not parents.
That's a big thing now.
I had one time early on, I had a 16-year-old in court for vaping, and their father asked me in court in front of their juvenile, would I please put their juvenile on a curfew? And I have no authority to give a curfew, but I said, sure, what time do you want the curfew to be? But it's like, Dad, you might need to get a testosterone check because this is your 16-year-old child and you don't have the courage to discipline them.
Yeah.
And that just frustrates me. But there's so many young people that just don't seem to care about life, and it's hard to get them connected. Part of it is I think they're on social media and video games too much. They're just detached from reality.
I think that's huge. And I was actually one of my questions I was going to ask you, that the youth is infatuated with social media, and I don't think it's doing them any favors.
No.
I think I told you guys earlier, in my mind, nothing good happens on social media.
Yeah, you did, yep.
And the exception would be if you're keeping track of family and friends to see what Aunt Mary's doing.
That was the original intent there.
Yeah, but if that's what you want to do now, it's so hard to set it up like that. It's they force all this other stuff.
There's just all this other stuff that gets involved, and juveniles spend so much time worrying about, whether they're accepted or whether they're liked, and they go along with anything. I got asked to go make a couple of presentations at Rooster Springs Elementary School 2 or 3 years back from some kids who were bullying other kids, fifth graders, on social media. And they wanted me to go talk. I went there 3 days in a row, and they wanted me to go talk to all of their fifth grade students in a special meeting about don't bully and don't put junk on social media that you They don't realize that doesn't go away.
You know, I can tell you that the way I was as a parent, and my kids can probably attest to this, you too, Steve, that there was no judge that was probably scarier than the look that I could give my kids from across the room.
And the example you just gave, Judge, about don't
curfew.
bully kids on social media, I got a quick fix for that. You don't need a cell phone. You don't have access to that anymore. You can't do it.
Turn it off.
Yeah. And I think they're doing that at Dripping Springs ISD. I think this year they're going to make kids not have cell phones during school.
Can we implement that here at work, please?
Yeah.
Please. What is now this will close it out. Do you have a favorite lawyer joke? Because I have one if you don't have one.
So I got to start out by saying I never intended to be a lawyer.
Obviously.
I went to law school to become a patent attorney, which are geeky and different from your average lawyer.
I'd be a good patent attorney.
Most people don't hang a shingle out and say, "Come with me with your patent law question."
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a catfish and an attorney?
What's that?
One is a scum-sucking bottom dweller, and the other's a fish.
That's great.
That's better.
And
That's
I've been
way
an
better
attorney.
than my
better than
joke.
the one you
I've been
had.
an attorney for 27 years, so
That's better.
my legal comrades or colleagues, please forgive me,
You
but
can
I
make
think that's
fun of
funny.
your own. Wow.
Mine was why don't sharks attack lawyers, and it's professional courtesy. That was my. John, thank you so much for finally letting me wrangle you to get on our little podcast, and I'm really honored. I really appreciate that you
I
came
appreciate
sat
you
with
inviting
us.
me, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Ready to turn your land dreams into reality? Look no further than Capital Farm Credit.
Need a loan for your perfect piece of land? Capital Farm Credit is there for you.
Their dedicated team will tailor a loan to fit your unique needs because your dreams are their priority.
Capital Farm Credit, your land, your legacy. Visit capitalfarmcredit.com or Mark Rutledge at 512-892-4425.
Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better.
Capital Farm Credit, an equal credit housing lender.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Get to know your local full-service Generac dealer.
Cody and Dylan with Nomic Power Solutions are a veteran-owned, Texas-based Generac dealer and installer.
Offering low monthly payment options, it's never been easier to gain independence from the grid.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Turnkey service including design, plumbing, electrical, and permits.
They even offer set it and forget it maintenance plans. Nomic Power Solutions.
Protect your home. Protect your family. Stay ready. Elevate your living experience with M. Elliott Studio, your trusted partner in interior design, registered and licensed by the state of Texas.
You want your home to reflect your personal style and identity. Investing in a well-crafted design doesn't just beautify your home, it enriches your life.
Team principal and owner, Montana Elliott, understands the profound impact of a thoughtfully designed space. From remodeling to full design, M. Elliott Studio is the first step to unlocking your style.
Turn your aspirations into reality. Tailored to your taste and desires, M. Elliott Studio will work to create an environment that embraces your style with style.
Your space, their expertise.
melliotstudio.com 512-781-0224.
This show has been brought to you in part by the real estate pros at the Mallet Integrity Team. When you're looking to buy or sell, you need them on your side. Why settle for less when you can have real estate done right? Give them a call at 512-829-2062 or get more info at malletintegrityteam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at malletandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.